In the year 2074, Lucille Rogers was an 84-year-old woman living in New Day's care home after being diagnosed with Alzheimer's around a year prior. As time progressed, her sickness only worsened and her memory faded slowly but surely. One of the few things that Lucille could remember without a doubt was her daughter, Amelia. Amelia was a 29-year-old whose already hectic life became a whole new kind of stressful ever since her mother's condition became worse. After her mother was diagnosed, almost everything involving her health and care was in Amelia's hands. Her father and Lucille's husband had passed away 3 years earlier, and she had no siblings. As things began to pile up and the stress began to build, she realized she needs somebody to help her out. So Amelia took it upon herself to buy herself a personal robot, RoboSim version 9. The RoboSim 9 was a relatively new robot on the market with a feature that made it more advanced than any other form of artificial intelligence. The machine had the ability to simulate and understand human emotions. This is a spectacular feat in itself, and Amelia figured she could get the extra compassion. To make the robot feel at least a bit more human, she decided to give it a name, Caroline. After a few weeks of letting herself get to know this newfound friend, Amelia decided it was time for her mother to meet the robot. Her mother was far from a fan of technology, and if she was able to understand what Caroline was, she knew she would not be pleased. Ever since Amelia was young and technology began advancing at an exciting but equally frightening pace, Lucille always discouraged her from becoming too dependent on it. And she was right, for when Amelia introduced Caroline to Lucille, to her surprise, her mother recognized the machine and gave her a look that seemed to be a mixture of disappointment and concern. Even as her memory was lost piece by piece, Lucille managed to look out for her daughter. Though at first Lucille strongly disapproved, Caroline became a regular part of Amelia's visits to her mom. With each new visit, she became more and more comfortable with the robot that was joining them. Soon, however, Amelia was given a promotion and her workload became unmanageable. She couldn't risk losing the job and the income she had, so she figured that giving up the daily visits to her mom would be something she'd have to do. Visiting once a week would be okay, right? That's when it hit her. She could send Caroline to visit her mother every day. After all, they were starting to get along, and she knew that Lucille could use someone there, even if it was just the machine. At first, Amelia would send Caroline to visit Lucille for an hour or two each day. It seemed to be making Caroline a lot happier, as well as Lucille. It surprised her how much a machine like Caroline could feel emotions so real. After the promotion, her job kept becoming more and more time-consuming, and before she knew it, it had been almost a month since she had visited her mother. Though she had not noticed, Caroline had been spending a lot more time visiting Lucille at the care home. Even though she was a machine, her abilities to simulate humans' emotions made her form an attachment to Lucille. Amelia thought little of the situation until she finally had time to go visit her mom. Amelia showed up at the care home, Caroline accompanying her, without much worry. Sure, it had been a month, but her mother couldn't forget about her, right? When the girl and the robot reached Lucille's room, the old woman looked at them, telling them to come in. "Sweetheart, my wonderful darling, how are you?" Lucille rang, a smile shining on her face. Amelia was so happy to see her mother and went to respond until she realized that Lucille wasn't talking to her. She was talking to Caroline. No, that couldn't be right. Caroline wasted no time responding. "Good morning, Mother. I am doing ever so well. How are you?" No. What? How did this happen? Her mother couldn't think that Caroline was her daughter. Caroline was a robot, a machine, nothing more than a pile of wires and metal controlled by a computer. She couldn't be able to feel all the emotions humans do. "Mom, hi. It's me, Amelia. I know I haven't been down in a while. I've got really caught up with work. Do you remember me, Mom?" said Amelia. Lucille just looked at her real daughter in confusion and asked who she was. "It's me, Mom, Amelia, your daughter." This just confused Lucille more, and she began to get frustrated. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" she questioned. "You're not my daughter. I don't know who you are." This managed to break her heart. Your mom wasn't supposed to forget about you. "Mom, it's me," Amelia begged. "Please remember, please." But no matter how hard she begged, her mom couldn't remember. She kept asking who she was, and what she was doing here. The one Lucille recognized as her daughter was Caroline, a machine. How was it possible for a machine to replace Amelia in her mother's mind? She wasn't comparable to a giant chunk of metal. She was a human, with depth and personality and the ability to love. Her emotions were real, not programmed like Caroline's. It was in that moment that words of her mother from many years ago finally hit her. She started depending too strongly on technology, and in the end, it just destroyed all she had left. In her rage of anger towards herself for letting it get this bad, towards Caroline for stealing her mother, towards her mother for forgetting her, even though she knew it wasn't her fault, she yanked out Caroline's panic cord. The panic cord was a cord mandatory on all forms of artificial intelligence, and when you pulled it out, it would shut off the machine permanently. It was for any moment that one felt the machine was becoming too powerful. As Caroline shut down, Amelia felt a brief pang of relief, until she realized that she just murdered the machine who her mother thought was her daughter. Lucille began yelling at Amelia, asking what she had done to her. It all became too chaotic, and Amelia was forced to leave the care home and her mother. She cursed at every robot she saw on her way home. Her mother had been right about relying on technology. It'll always end up letting you down and screwing you over. The doctors had told Amelia that her mother wouldn't be able to remember who she was anymore, but that didn't stop Amelia from coming to visit Lucille every single day with that tiny bit of hope she managed to hold on to. Her mother may not have passed away, but she had still lost her. Being forgotten by the single most important person in your life may be just the most painful thing of all.